Mic check. Am I coming through? Can you hear me pretty good? I see we only have 4 people so far. Am I coming through?
Yes.
Mic check. Okay, good.
Yes.
Great, great. Do you see me okay and everything? Is everything okay?
Yes.
Great. All right, I'm gonna get started. I know this is kind of unusual, but we are living in some very unusual circumstances and situations. My name is Alvin Wellington Barlow Sr. I'm a pastor and an attorney. Been an attorney since I graduated from law school in 1985 from the University of Florida College of Law, and been practicing law in Jacksonville since 1986. I've been a pastor since a minister since 2002. And started pastoring a small church in 2012, and been running a ministry since 2006. And back in about 2021, God assigned me to help homeless people who, my law office is right across the street from Trinity Rescue Mission on Union Street. And I see a lot of homeless people, and they've become my friends, and I've been helping them with financial assistance, tents, food, clothing, latrines, you name it. But these people are near and dear to me, and I've been assigned to help them by God. So I'm going to continue to do that. Let me pray. Father God, I thank you for this blessed opportunity to share this information that I've discovered the last couple years, and just ask that you allow the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart to be completely acceptable in your sight. In Jesus' name, amen. Okay, I've been working on 2 fronts with the homeless people. I've been attacking this homelessness bill, this panhandling bill, and also been working with trying to get them permanent supportive housing. We have shelters in town, but I know people who've been living in shelters for three years now. Shelters are supposed to be temporary transitional housing, 6 months or so. You're moving people in and out, but we have people literally living in homeless shelters. I just learned today that one of the shelters, I'm not going to call the name, usually lets in 70 to 73 people per night to spend the night, because they have some people who spend the night and then they let them leave in the morning and they come back in the evening. Well, they're only accepting 30 people now because supposedly they have not enough food to satisfy everybody. So I'm going to go through this little PowerPoint here, and the first part of it is going to deal with Jacksonville's new ordinance, which is 2022-574. I'm going to highlight some of the most important parts of it, and the public needs to really understand what this law is, what it's not, what it's purported to be, and what it actually is. And so I'm attacking it because it's hypocritical. It is not what they say it is. It is not designed to do what they claim that they created it to do, and I'm going to prove that out with the substance of it this evening. So here we go. It's amending section 804.806, pedestrians walking where sidewalk not provided. And so it's amending 804.807, charitable solicitations by permit. So what they've done is, this part wasn't in the original bill. I have the original bill that they drafted last year. But what happened was I started telling them, look, the bill that you created, although you have exceptions for firemen, police, and construction workers, that exception doesn't apply for firemen who are out there with their boots collecting once a year. Well, I'm thinking that, it's true that that exception wouldn't apply to them. So if they pass this law and somebody attack it like I will, the firemen, won't be able to do their charitable deeds. So I'm trying to attack the statute, the ordinance itself. Well, what they did was they went and wrote an exception to bring in the firemen to lawfully give them the right to solicit. Now, the problem with that is you're claiming, and as you'll see, you're claiming that it's about public safety. Well, I found a situation that I did some research, and I found a fireman that got killed while holding his boot up in another state within the last 3 years. A fireman actually got killed while he was out, collecting for multiple, whatever it is they do, MDS or whatever, got killed. And so they don't think of things like that, but that's the reality of what we're dealing with. So when you get down to here, it says, whereas a report issued July 12, 2022, Jacksonville was identified as the 6th worst municipality in the country for pedestrian deaths being struck by vehicles on Jacksonville streets. That's true, but what they don't tell you is how many of these were panhandlers. For all we know, not one of them was a panhandler. Jacksonville is a very dangerous place because it's large. It's the largest landmass city in the United States of America, so we have streets everywhere. And then the two interstates converge right in Jacksonville, and the vein to get downtown is Union Street, which feeds right off of 95 and I-10. Get to this next slide here. Okay. So what we have here is whereas most recent data from Florida Department of Transportation from the time period of January 1st, 2021 to December 31st, 2021, Duval County experienced a total of 492 vehicle pedestrian crashes, from which there were 48 fatalities. Again, how many of these were from panhandlers who were out in the streets panhandling versus people running across dangerous intersections like Arlington Expressway? You know, they put that gate, those fences up there, and then grew the plants, the trees years ago, because people were getting killed just going from one side of Arlington Expressway to the other one. So they're not specifying, but they're trying to bootstrap this data to fit into the narrative that they're claiming, but I have not seen one report from anybody. So if they exist, they have not shared that with the public. So down here, a study dated September 2021, Florida Department of Transportation evaluated Florida pedestrian and bicycle. So now we got pedestrians and bicyclists, okay? We know that most panhandlers do not use bicycles, okay? So that's another data extrapolation that we're not sure whether or not, or how many homeless people or not homeless people, but panhandlers are included within that data. That's the point that I'm trying to make here. So when you come over to this one, we're looking at amending 804, Jacksonville Traffic Code, amended, one second here, amended Part 8, Section 804, 806, pedestrians walking where sidewalks not provided, not to solicit rides, certain charitable solicitations allowed. Section 804, 807, charitable solicitations by permit, ordinance code, and to create a new Part 17, pedestrian and vehicle safety, to read as follows. Now what they're saying is, although they're going to proscribe or prohibit certain people from walking between lanes, some people are going to be able to do that if they have a permit. So again, I'm going to come back to this time and time again. If it's really public safety, why are you allowing some people to walk between those lanes to get charitable donations for multiple sclerosis or whatever it is, and the other charitable organizations, whatever they're panhandling, basically. But what the city's going to do is allow certain charities to panhandle to get their funds, but they won't let the homeless panhandle to get money to eat. And so you come down here to 804, 807, charitable solicitations by permit. Now, we're going to get into the hypocrisy of this right now. A permit for charitable solicitation, design, designated roadway as defined, may be obtained. The applicant shall provide a plan. Now listen, what they're saying is a homeless person can apply for a permit. That's true. They can apply for it, but will they get it? Let's see what the conditions are to get one. You have to have a plan reviewed by a safety plan reviewed by the traffic engineer, which plan will maximize the safety of the applicant's representatives. How many homeless people can do that? As well as the motoring public at the locations where the solicitation will take place within 90 days from the effective date of this section. The city's traffic engineer shall develop a definitive list of safety methods to identify and provide visibility to all individuals who will be operating in the right-of-way, blase, blase. So what they're saying is a homeless person can, and the guy said it on the radio, Councilman Carrico, a homeless person can get a permit, but he didn't get into all of these nitty-gritty details right here. This fight is fixed. So the average person, even if you're not homeless, even if you're not a panhandler, you could just be a regular citizen with a degree in college. You will not get that permit if you cannot provide them satisfactorily a safety plan. So it says all solicitations shall occur during daylight hours from sunrise to sunset only. Let's go to the next one. And this one says Each permit application shall be approved only if it is determined, here's the discretion, that the use will not interfere with the safe and efficient movement of traffic, and the use will cause no danger to the public. Now, can the firemen say that? No. Can any charitable organization say that? No. But they're going to use their discretion to give it to whom they want to give it to, and to not to deny to whom they don't want to have it. We already know that. This is a fixed fight. Now, the prohibited activity. Let's get into the nitty-gritty details. Panhandling is prohibited unless you have a permit. Standing in the medians, that's prohibited unless you have a permit. Walking roads between motor vehicles, prohibited unless you have a permit. Making transactions with occupants. Now, this is one of the main things that one of the proponents of this bill says. You still have your constitutional right. You can still voice your concerns. We're just trying to stop the transactions. I'm going to play an audio for you for that later on. We're just trying to stop the transactions. That's a bald face. That's a departure from the truth. I need some controlled aggression here. Swift to hear, slow to speak, slow to wrath. That's some prevarication. They're not trying to stop the transactions of the firemen. They're not trying to stop the transactions of the permit holders who they will grant a permit. They're trying to stop the transactions of the people who need the transactions the most. That's the poor, the needy, the hungry, and the homeless. Watch this. For the purpose of this section, the phrase public rights of way shall be defined as this statutory provision here, prohibitions, except as provided herein or as otherwise permitted by law or through a valid permit issued pursuant to this section, it is unlawful to make any use of the public rights of way in a manner that interferes with the safe and efficient movement of people and property from place to place on a public road or right of way. Such prohibited activity includes, watch this, occupancy of a median unless you have a permit. It is unlawful for any person to stop, stand, or otherwise occupy or remain in the median unless you have a permit, which they won't give to a homeless person. On any designated roadway, when the person is not in the process of lawfully crossing the road in accordance with applicable traffic safety laws, unless you have a permit. Stopping, standing, or otherwise occupying a median through two consecutive opportunities to cross in accordance with applicable traffic and safety laws is prima facie evidence of a violation of this subsection. Let's say it again. Unless you have a permit. That's the hypocrisy of this. Exemptions. Nothing in this section shall prohibit the following. Law enforcement. Now, this was in the original bill. Law enforcement, fire, rescue, or other government employees or contractors acting within the scope of their lawful authority. That's when I told them, I said, look, that's not going to cover firemen who are out there with their boots. That's because that's not a lawful activity. That's a charitable activity. So that's not going to cover it. I'm thinking these people are going to just let's forget it, or let's ban everybody. No, they go and create an exemption for the firemen to still be able to do their, and I have nothing against firemen. I have something against hypocrisy. Hypocrisy is you're going to let the firemen do it to collect for their charity, but you will not let a homeless or panhandler do it who needs to eat. That's hypocrisy to me, okay? So now Clay County, if you do a Google search and say Clay County Panhandling Ordinance, you'll Google search will come up with a hit from January of this year. Clay County passed one of these, but this is the difference between theirs and ours. They said, we will not let anybody panhandle. Not the firemen, not charitable organizations, not the homeless. Why? Because they knew that it was unconstitutional to let some do it and not others do it. It is unconstitutional. I've been telling these people this for the longest. For the life of me, I cannot understand why Jacksonville is so obstinate, so recalcitrant, so hard-headed. So I don't get it. Even Atlantic Beach has a better ordinance for the homeless than Jacksonville. I was down there. I spoke when they passed it, and I commended them because that bill has so much mercy in it. It's a requirement for a police officer to try to find alternative, a shelter or something before they can arrest the homeless person. That's not how it is in Jacksonville. I can't figure it out. We're the largest city. by land mass in the United States of America. We have so much talent downtown, but there's just this mercilessness that goes on downtown, and I don't understand it at all. But I'm going to fight it until I die. A person or entity engaged in charitable solicitations while in possession of a valid permit issued pursuant to this section, so long as the person is in compliance with the requirements of the section. What's the requirement? You have to have a safety plan that has to be approved by the city of Jacksonville, which the average homeless person is not going to have. Excuse me. Penalties. Let's talk about that. This is one of the reasons I really wanted to do this right here, because the public needs to understand on two fronts. Number one, homeless people need to understand what's going to happen to them if they ask. And we need to understand, the ones who give to them, what is going to happen if they ask and we give it to them. So here's how this works. A civil penalty up to $100 for each violation, provided, first of all, on a first offense, the offender is given an educational notice from the sheriff's office, okay? Educating the offender, and the notice shall be documented in the sheriff's information system. So you're going to be listed in there. I was saying this earlier when I was coming to work. They're going to write your name on a naughty list. But in God's eyesight, that's a good list. Your name is going to be on a list that is obeying scripture to give to the homeless and the poor, and fulfilling what Jesus talks about in Matthew chapter 25. So from the sheriff's department, you're going to be on a naughty list. But on God's behalf, you're going to be on a good list. So your name is going to be put on that list for this purpose. For the second violation, the offender shall also be given an official warning and may be trespassed, if applicable, from the non-pedestrian part of the block. So that's primarily for the homeless person. And it can go for the giver. For the third violation, if an additional warning is not appropriate, a civil citation shall be issued. That's a civil citation for each subsequent offense after you've had your first two warnings. So if you give somebody something today, get a warning, give somebody something tomorrow, get an official warning, give somebody something the next day, you get your first $100 citation, you get caught the next day, it's another $100 citation and another $100 citation. So you're being criminalized for being merciful. For the fourth violation, in conjunction with civil penalties, the offender may be arrested or given notice to appear. That's the person who's asking for the money, a maximum of 10 days. Now, this is what I was trying to explain to the councilman. And I tell them that, you know, they're living in an ivory tower, because they really believe that, you know, when it's 20 to 30 degrees outside, people don't have anywhere to sleep inside, don't even have a tent because they take those up. They really believe that a person's going to obey this statute, this ordinance, and not ask. No, they will ask just to get arrested, to stay in the jail, but up to 10 days and get 3 meals a day, 3 hots in the cot. That's what they call it. So you're going to have people going to take advantage of this ordinance here. And some of these people have been to prison for 10, 20 years. So going to jail for 10 years is not going to bother some of them. But there are some of them who've not been to jail. They're going to make criminals out of them just to take advantage of this law right here, to go in the jail to, do 30 days or whatever the case may be. So what we have to understand, ladies and gentlemen, is this is a very, very serious situation that we have going here. And we're a part of it, whether we realize it or not. A person who aids or participates in a violation of which a civil penalty may be assessed under this part shall be considered a principal in violation and may be assessed a civil penalty up to a maximum of one of the prescribed violation. That's $100. That's you and me. That's us. Due to the transient nature of these activities, each incident occurring more than every 20 minutes after the violation is corrected shall constitute a separate violation. So let me correct what I said earlier. You can get violated for this every 20 minutes or so. Every 20 minutes or so. Okay, now I want to get into, I dissected some of the main arguments that they used at the council meeting last week, and I call that the St. Valentine's Day Massacre, because they massacred the homeless on Valentine's Day. They passed this ordinance on Valentine's Day. I have an audio file here. I'm just gonna let it roll, and I kind of narrated it when I did it to just kind of show you some of the dichotomy of the argument.
Through the president, the substitute amends sections 804, 804.806, and 804.807 of the ordinance code to modify the permitting process for charitable solicitation along designated roadways and establish permitting for indigent persons and other non-commercial solicitors. It reduces the age of allowed solicitation participants from 21 to 18, and it moves the oversight of the permitting process from the Neighborhoods Department to the Public Works Department, extends the permit period from 48 hours to 72 hours, and expands the regulation of pedestrians walking in a roadway to also include riders of animals. The substitute creates a new section 804.1701 to make it unlawful for pedestrians to occupy or remain in a median for an extended period of time, physically interact with occupant of a motor vehicle while in the traveled portion of a designated roadway, or utilize the public right-of-way for commercial use. Provides for exemptions including law enforcement, fire and rescue, or other governmental employees or contractors acting within the scope of their lawful authority, and a person performing inspection, construction, maintenance, survey, or other legally authorized services. It also establishes an exemption for a person or entity in possession of a valid solicitation permit and specifies penalties and citation procedures, including a civil penalty of up to $100. The substitute repeals section 250.118 related to newspaper street sales, gives the Traffic Engineering Division 90 days to develop criteria for issuing permits, designates that the first 30 days after enactment shall be a public education period with only warnings being issued, corrects various Scrivener's errors, and then provides a process for a denied permit.
Thank you, Mr. Peterson. Ms. Stapopoulos, do you have something to add to that?
The exemption is for firefighters who petition or who request a permit, and they can then do the very acts that the bill reader just read that the public cannot do. Namely, they can walk between cars, they can be on animals, they can also stand in the median and go in and out of traffic. That's an exemption to this bill that allows charitable organizations to continue to panhandle, but it will not allow poor people to panhandle without a permit, and we know that they're not going to give every homeless person a permit, number one. Number two, even if they do give permits to homeless people, what they're not telling you is that they can only get a permit, I think, 3 to 4 times a year. So even if they do give, let's say you're a homeless person, you want a permit, well, they give it to you and you have 3 to 4 times per year to panhandle. That's it. So this is not going to work.
All righty, so we're on the substitute. Mr. Carrick, are you on the bill, or do you want to talk on the substitute? Mr. President, if I may, the substitute is pretty substantial. It's almost like the bill, so I was just going to go ahead and just give my piece for the substitute leading into the bill, if that's all right? Sure. All right. So thank you, sir, for recognizing me. And through the chair, thanks everyone for their patience with this legislation. I think we started meeting on this in March and finally went to committees, went to neighborhoods 3 times, TEU once, where each committee was a lot of debate, a lot of input, and we got to a place where I think we have a good bill. So I did want to be clear to everyone that this is not an attack on homelessness. This is not an attack. It doesn't outlaw panhandling even in the city of Jacksonville. This basically is a mechanism to keep our citizens safer by, regulating some of these activities in the medians and the public right-of-ways in our intersections where it's dangerous.
Now let's dissect that for a second. He just said to regulate certain activities. The certain activities that they're regulating are homeless people are not going to be able to go out, stand on the medians and go out in and out of traffic. But the firemen and the charitable organizations who petition or apply for a permit, they will be able to do that. The very things that he's claiming are dangerous, they're going to be able to do it for their charitable purposes, but a homeless person cannot do it to eat.
We all know Jacksonville has recently been named the number 6 most dangerous city in the country for pedestrian injuries and fatalities. So, I feel we can either...
That is not necessarily true. It is pedestrian and cyclists. He's left the cyclists out. So it's not just pedestrians, it's also cyclists. I've seen some of the studies that they're talking about. It's not just people who are walking, it's also people who are riding bicycles. We have a lot of bike lanes, but people get hit, get killed even on bicycles. But one of the things they have not told anyone is how many of these crashes that killed pedestrians and or homeless and or people are homeless persons. They're just extrapolating that data, but no one has said how many homeless people are killed. In other words, these could be just regular people riding bicycles or pedestrians walking across streets and not necessarily panhandling.
Try to do something about it, or we can stand back and let these things keep happening. And this is a way to just make our streets a little safer. Wanted to highlight JSO's involvement. Through 3 different sheriffs, we've been working through this bill, and they've all had the support of it every step along the way. I've had a lot of help from the Office of General Counsel Representative Gabby Young over there at JSO, and all their officers and leadership, have been involved, including the Blake Department and many others like Chief Burns, who's out there tonight. So I just wanted to rise to say that I appreciate everyone's support on this, and there's a lot of people standing by for questions if you have them. Thank you.
Yeah, and we're still on the substitute. This will be a voice vote on the substitute, and then we can discuss. The substitute is the bill. We can get into discussing the bill as substituted. But I have 2 people on the queue. Do we want to wait until we... Mr. Gaffney, would you like to wait until we get to it? Thank you. All righty. So seeing no one else in the queue on the substitute, all in favor of the substitute, say aye. Aye. Those opposed have the same right. The substitute, we have 1 nay. Let it be known that Councilmember Precy Jackson is a nay.
The bill is substituted.
So we have a motion and a second on the bill as substituted. Mr. Boylan, Councilman Boylan, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to stand for 2 reasons to share. This is a genuine concern of my constituents. I've heard time and time again about the concerns of folks interacting at the intersections in the Mandarin area. But I also I don't want people to lose sight of the fact that we as a council and as an administration has done a lot to support the homeless in our community. We had Urban Restaurant today. We had an opportunity, and the mayor was recognized for his efforts in supporting the homeless issues in our community. The work that we're doing in the Critical Quality of Life Issues Committee, and I'll be moving forward an effort to do some more work with respect to providing a wraparound, permanent housing wraparound services for the homeless in our community. I don't we need to lose sight of that. This isn't, as Councilmember Carrico said, it's really a public safety issue that we're attempting to address here and not targeting any particular sector of our community. Thank you.
I wholeheartedly disagree with that, but I respect his position. He started this by saying that his constituents are highly concerned with pedestrians interacting with people at intersections. We never get that kind of complaint when the when the firemen are out there with their boots, filling the boots for muscular dystrophy or whatever charitable organization they support. You don't hear that with Little League football teams on Saturday mornings. We've seen this for years. We've seen this for decades. No complaints whatsoever when the children are out there. They give to the children, they give to the firemen, but when it comes down to poor people, the conscience is so seared and damaged that they don't even want to see homeless people out there. So I disagree with that perspective.
Councilman Diamond, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to rise and explain why I'm going to support this bill. Admittedly, when I first read it, I struggled with it a bit, and then I started to hear from my constituents who overwhelmingly were in favor of it. And so from a public safety point of view, I think this makes absolute sense. It is true that Jacksonville is one of the most dangerous places for pedestrians. And one of the issues we have, especially along Atlantic and along Beach, at least in my district, going into Councilman Bowman's district and into Councilman Carrico's district, is people coming up to cars repeatedly over and over again. And these are some of our busiest intersections. So I think it makes sense to give JSO the power to say that's against the law here in Jacksonville. I would also commend my colleague for carving out something for nonprofits who are properly registered with the city and doing things right, in particular our firefighters who do their Fill the Boot campaign. I think it was a critical fix.
And finally, I'll just say this. The reason I struggled with it at first is because, you know, I have a heart and I'm a Christian and I believe that we need to help people who are in need. And so I think the other half of this bill is that we continue to do things like supporting Councilwoman Pittman's nonprofit and other nonprofits and other agencies in our community that help the people that are trying to get help at someone's car, the ones who are legitimately trying to get it. And I just think as we pass this today, we need to keep that in mind, that Sulzbacher is doing a great job and other entities are doing a great job. So let's take the dollars that we might have handed out our window and hand it to these great nonprofits that are actually doing the work and getting to people in need first. Thank you.
We have another person who is contradicting himself. The first thing he says is his constituents are complaining or concerned about people coming up to cars. Then, in a few breaths later, he says a critical fix was to make sure that the firemen could still, approach cars, okay, and fill their boots for their organization. And ladies and gentlemen, what he just highlighted is why this bill is unconstitutional. Because if it's really about public safety, then the firemen shouldn't be out there. The charitable organization shouldn't be out there. And Clay County, even though they're a lot smaller than us, they got it right. They banned everybody from being on the medians, walking in and out of traffic. They said, no, we cannot have anybody doing it if we want our bill to be constitutional. Jacksonville is so hard-headed that they just can't do right by the people. Next person.
Councilman Carlucci, you recognize.
Thank you, Mr. President. I struggled with this bill a bit too. I admit to being a person who will give money to panhandlers sometimes more often than not. And I really don't care what they do with the money. I just give it kind of in an unconditional way because everybody has their own story. But I do think Councilman Carrico did a good job making this an enforcement tool, but not with a hammer. I congratulate you on that. I will support this bill, but I will say this also, and I compliment Councilman Borland on his critical quality care and your subcommittee members. Would love to have been on that committee. And but we're going to really need to step up our game on prevention, on mental health, for prevention, to keep people from becoming homeless. And I'm talking about the panhandlers now. Not all panhandlers are homeless. Some of them have figured out how to make money. I get that. But you know what? Some of them are down on their luck. And we are taking steps in the right direction on prevention, but I'm going to make it my point to do everything I can to beef up this, not only panhandling, but for crime in general. Can't just enforce crime and expect it to go away. It won't. We got to get to the root cause of it. And I don't mean to insinuate panhandlers are committing a crime, although I guess if I give money to a panhandler, which I probably still will on occasion, let the panhandler police come and get me. But I do think it's a good bill. I think it's a part of the puzzle, but it's not the biggest part of the puzzle. Prevention, biggest part of the puzzle, and I'll be happy to work with Councilman Borland if you'd like.
They're not going to give you a ticket, sir. They're not going to do it. You're a councilman, well-respected, well-known in the community. You will not get a citation. You will be one of those persons who do not understand that your status and race will benefit you in a way that you won't even understand. But the average African-American male under 50 or so will get that citation. Definitely. Average African-American female will get that citation. But the average person who looks like you, your age, older white women, they will not get that citation because discretion will be exercised. But the average young African-American is going to get that citation. And if anything goes wrong, not only will they get a citation, but they may get a death certificate too, because this law is going to invite opportunity after opportunity after opportunity for unscrupulous, it's not a lot of them, but there are some unscrupulous police officers. I've cross-examined some, had some fired, so I know that they exist. It's going to give them an opportunity to abuse the public.
Thank you. We still have 6 more in the queue. Councilmember Clark Murray, you recognize.
Thank you, Mr. President. So I, as well as my colleagues stated earlier, the fact that they struggle with this bill, I struggle with this bill as well, because I initially think about the sports teams who solicit at the intersections to support themselves in regards to if they're going to a championship or if they're just trying to get uniforms to get that additional dollars they need in order to be able to get those uniforms or to go to that championship game. And at the same time, I listened to my colleagues talk about the different types of panhandling in terms of you have some aggressive panhandlers. I personally have not experienced that. Most of the panhandlers that I've experienced, they will weave some little cross and they will want to give that in exchange for $1 or whatever it is that you want to give them. So I did struggle with this bill as well because I want those sports teams to be able to raise their funds. However, it's more than just sports teams out there. Most recently, I was privy to a story of a homeless family who happens to hang, in a sense, at a intersection, and during the Texan game, one of the players, he just happened to be driving through that area, and he decided to give that family a whole month's worth of stay at a hotel. Well, there were some other people who were there too, and they were privy to. They gave that family clothes and other things, and lo and behold, the next day they were back on that corner panhandling. So for them, it's more of it's a game. They're trying to get money. It's not, and not having a legitimate need. They're trying to flim-flam people. And so I listened to the different aspects of panhandling. And so I thought about the safety aspect as well. And so I've decided to support this bill. Thank you.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, this is a very interesting one. The first thing she says is she struggled with this bill, but then the next thing came out of her mouth was that her concern was that little leaguers were not going to be able to solicit anymore to go to their championship games. Just pause for a second. What are we talking about? We are talking about homeless people who don't have enough to eat on a daily basis. But this lady is concerned about little leaguers. No mercy, I'm sorry, sister. No mercy, no compassion. Secondarily, she talks about aggressive panhandlers. And then she talks about this family. Listen, the last argument she gave with the family is the one I hear all the time. Okay, listen. Yes, there are some people out there who run games. Can you differentiate between the ones who are really starving and the ones who are running games? No, you cannot. So why do we allow people, I don't do it, I don't allow people to do this. Why do we allow people to extrapolate the bad people all over the good ones? Let's say it's 4 or 5 flim-flammers. Well, that's 200 or 300 homeless people in that area. So why are we clumping the good ones with the bad ones? Period, point blank. What she still doesn't understand is, yeah, they got the room, yeah, they got the clothes, but they have to eat, lady. Please, they have to eat. So what if they're out there now panhandling to get something to eat? How about that? They have a place to stay, they have clothes, but they still have to eat. Did that cross your mind at all? Probably not.
Councilmember Priestley Jackson, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I wasn't on either of the committees that heard this bill, and so I don't have some of the back bill, but I can read, and so I read it, and I can read the current ordinance code as it relates to this 804.806, and I think I'll start with what does this new legislation do that 804.806 B and D not do already? And 806B says pedestrians walking where sidewalks not provided, not to solicit rides, certain charitable solicitations allowed. B, no person shall stand or be upon or go upon any roadway for the purpose of soliciting a ride or the sale of anything or service or for charitable contributions or for the purpose of soliciting any business or employment from the occupant of any vehicle unless said solicitation is permitted pursuant to section 804.807. And D says, no person shall stand or be upon or go upon any shoulder or berm or any neutral ground or any roadway for the purpose of soliciting a ride, employment, business, or charitable contribution, or for the purpose of soliciting the sale of anything or service from the occupant of any vehicle unless said solicitation is permitted pursuant to section 804.807. Herein, neutral ground means and includes any area which divides a roadway or divides the roadway for vehicles driving in opposite directions. Violations of this section shall constitute a Class A offense. And so then I was able to brush up on Class A offenses, which are 10 days and $25 fines. And so I don't understand why we're doing it. You know, I try to live by the edict, you want to love, do justice, love mercy, and walk humbly. So let's talk about the neighbors who just might be in the roadway. You know, 15% of our neighbors live in poverty. That's 150,000 of them. I haven't seen any legislation how we're going to ameliorate poverty in Jacksonville. You know, we have an inordinate number of households that are headed up by women. I keep money in the center of my car to give to individuals who are standing out there. Because if I give with the best of intentions, my responsibility is not what they're going to do past that. But it's very humbling to see folks doing that. And if they're running a scam, they got to answer to that. We're creating a crime for it, and we already have something on the books to address it. You know, and the facts about, I think in the very beginning of this legislation, it related to the deaths in Jacksonville. Well, I think that we have other ways that our JSO resources can be used. And I don't see that reflected in this legislation. Let's pull back the curtain and see who we are talking about. Who we're talking about. This is going to disproportionately impact African Americans. I agree with what Councilman Gaffney said, because you will find those more in needs in those intersections. It's also going to be an impact on those of us who know how to navigate the system and those who don't. So you see faith organizations in the middle of the road, so now they're going to go through the process of getting permission to do it. You have young people, sports groups, campaigns. Which of us sitting up here had somebody waving on the corner in the middle of the road? And then the beloved firefighters in the boots who love that. And then everyday people. And so I can't understand for the life of me something that we know will disproportionately impact those in our midst who are the most vulnerable. That's who's going to be hit by this. But we already have something. Someone tell me what this does. I'm not talking about the new creation of charitable contributions. Tell me what this does that 804.806 doesn't do. And I can't see it. It seems that we spend a lot of time deciding what we're going to penalize people for lately. We passed a lot of things that relate to creating new criminal offenses. Let's improve the quality of life.
Thank you. Councilmember Ferraro.
Okay, now before this guy gets up, you heard everything she just said. Everything. She talked about she gave multiple issues. She gave poverty, 15%, 150,000 people going to be negatively impacted by this. She talked about there's no legislation to end poverty. But watch what this man gets up and focuses on. Just watch this. This amazed me when I first heard this. And this is dirty politics.
Thank you, Mr. President. I couldn't disagree with that more. I don't see it as a color issue. I see it as a safety issue. Having people walking around your car, distracting people at intersections, walking around with pets, walking around with children.
Notice what he just said. People walking around cars, that will be allowed in this bill by firefighters and by people who have permits. Most of them will be charitable organizations, little league teams, and all of that. So this is a crock.
At busy intersections, and you want to talk about public safety?
Yeah, I do want to talk about public safety. I have an article where a fireman got killed while he was in a charitable situation with his boot. He got run over and killed in another state, but I have it.
Man, I can't think of something more dangerous than cars running through there, watching where they're, trying to watch the road, especially with all the construction going on.
So if you can't See, if you know that's dangerous, why are you allowing firemen to do it? Why are you allowing little leaguers to do it? Why are you allowing charitable organizations to do it if it's such a safety issue? Ladies and gentlemen, this is not a safety issue. That's why I'm taking the time to dissect these false arguments, these red herrings.
And now you got somebody who's sitting in a chair with a dog that's on a leash that's going to run into traffic, or you've got little kids walking around.
Little kids, that's right, little kids that's been allowed for years. This man is an adult. He's been around a long time. It's never been an issue before because he wasn't running for mayor.
I think this, I think things that have been brought up are important, but we're kind of getting off the track of what this bill is about.
No, we're not. This bill is about preventing your constituents from complaining about homeless people begging, and they don't want to give, and they don't want to see people begging, and they're calling up you, begging you to stop the people from begging them. That's what this is really about.
It's about safety. It's not about standing on the corner and being able to use your First Amendment. You can still do that. None of that's being affected. This is keeping the transaction.
It is being affected. Listen to this. Listen to this prevarication right here.
From the driver and the person on the street from being able to do a money transaction. That's what this is about. I think
that's not true, ladies and gentlemen, because the firemen are still going to put their boot next to your window and let you drop some money in it. This is false hypocrisy.
Mr. Carrico, you did a good job explaining that on the radio, and I think Mr. Boylan, you did a good job explaining, some of the other problems that we're having in the city that need to be addressed. But indecision is also a decision by doing nothing, and that's pretty much what's been happening here. We're trying to make sure that this doesn't continue. New York had the squeegee law that happened when people ended up going on intersections and washing people's windows, and nothing happened. And guess what? It started getting to a point when people started paying on a regular basis, and they stopped. The people who were getting this money that you're talking about where they're doing this as a scam, they started hitting windows and kicking doors. I'm going to tell you, I've been in these intersections where people have jumped out to go get $1 from somebody where I almost ran over them. And I know some of the big trucks and some of the companies that have higher trucks are not going to see little kids and dogs and people walking in front of them because they're not supposed to be expecting that. This is an intersection. It's a roadway. So I'm not looking at this as being attacking a black person or a person of color or any of this other stuff that's coming up.
Nobody said that, ladies and gentlemen. Nobody said that. This is a red herring. This man is not addressing those other issues that Councilman Priestley Jackson mentioned. He's just not, he just like the guy did me on the radio. When I talked about, race came up, that's what he focused on. Listen, this bill is about preventing homeless people from asking for money. The best way to do that, City of Jacksonville, is to set aside a percentage of the millions. You gave away $500 million to the rich who didn't need it. And now you're going to come here with a straight face and tell people this is about public safety, yet you'll let firemen do the very same things you're preventing people from doing who are asking for money for food. Absolutely evil.
This is a safety issue. We've got children, we've got parents out there, and hopefully they are parents, but I don't know if they are parents or not. They could just be using these kids to draw money, just like some of the pets. I agree that we need to help out some of the homeless. That's not part of this bill. This bill is designed to actually do.
I agree that we need to help out some of the homeless. Well, we're going to see if you're going to vote for that, because some bills are coming up, and we're going to see how you're going to vote. I'm going to hold you to it.
Do something with people at these intersections doing a transaction. So let's not forget, that's what this bill is about. And I appreciate, Mr. Carrico, you putting this bill forward with all the different problems that came through and all the deferrals and everything that happened with this. But let's not lose sight of what this is. This is a bill to keep our citizens safe and our people driving in the cars. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Councilmember Priestley Jackson, for a second time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to be really clear. I said it would disproportionately impact African Americans. I didn't say it was designed to target African Americans. So let's just let the record accurately reflect that.
Councilman Bowman, you recognize.
Thank you, Mr. President, to President, my colleagues. This is
continue to be one of the biggest safety issues. It is by far the biggest safety issues that I get called and text and emails on every day from my constituents. And actually 3 years ago, I met with the Office of General Counsel to try to initiate something like this. And the lawyers kept on trying to make it an issue about freedom of speech, First Amendment. It's like, no, it has nothing to do with that. It's about safety for people, and it's about safety of people and vehicles. And we can never get to that point. And I was watching a few counties around the state and kind of waiting to see. I know there's some lawsuits out there, but didn't think to my colleague, Mr. Carrico, appreciate your hard work on this, because I think we're in a good spot right now. I want to say something. I'll talk about strategic plan at the end of the night. I've got the list right here of all the inputs. We've made a lot of progress on that, and I think we're going to be in a pretty good spot on that. But about 50% of the initiatives are mental health, homelessness, rental assistance, affordable housing, and skills training. So we do, as a council, very much want to help the folks out there that need help. But it's not by letting them be in intersections. So I'm fully going to support this, and that's why I'm a co-sponsor. Thank you.
It's not by letting them be in intersections. So you're going to let the people with permits be in intersections. So, ladies and gentlemen, the fact that they are making that exception is what makes this bill unconstitutional. Please mark these words, ladies and gentlemen. Clay County did it, right? You either ban everybody or nobody, period, point blank.
Council Vice President Salem, you recognize.
Thank you, Mr. President. This started in neighborhoods about 8 or 9 months ago. We gave Mr. Carrico a pretty tough time. He brought it back a second time, and we beat him up again. But he was stubborn, and he kept working on it, and I really think he's got a good bill. And I heard his radio show, and I just want to make one point that I have made to him since then. This council funded a mental health offender program. And I was screaming in the radio hoping he would say this. So if this person, and which is now a full-fledged program, was gone beyond my dream of what it would be. But if that person does end up at the jail and they have a mental health problem and they haven't committed a felony, there is a way to divert them out of the jail into a program run by Sulzbacher to get them wraparound services and get them the help that they need. So the person that was with Councilman Carrico on the radio show said the person's going to spend 10 days in jail. They don't have to spend 10 days in jail. They can get help. We have a program that is very unique for this city. So I just wanted to mention that as one positive thing. Thank you.
Councilmember Howland, you recognize.
Thank you, Mr. President. I am supporting this bill because it accomplishes one specific goal and has the opportunity to accomplish another. That one specific goal is pedestrian and driver safety, and I get it. Almost too many times to count, I have seen near misses on Beach Boulevard and at all the busy intersections, just as Councilman Diamond mentioned. But the goal it has the opportunity to achieve is to encourage our homeless residents not necessarily to panhandle, but instead to stay at one of our many shelters and take advantage of the supportive services that so many wonderful organizations have to offer in our city. And I know that sounds a bit naive, but I recently took part in the point in time count that Changing Homelessness put together, and I interviewed about a dozen, or a few more than a dozen, homeless folks around town. I understand the barriers to entry at some of these shelters, but if we can still channel folks at some of the shelters that we have with available capacity and then on to supportive services, we can make a real difference in their lives. So along with my yes vote on this bill, I plan to explore ways that we can give opportunities for private citizens and private philanthropy to help get folks off the street and into using these supportive services. Fines and permit fees in the future from this particular legislation could be one of those means of funding this. We could...
Can you imagine? Did you just hear what this man said? The fines and the fees are going to be levied against homeless people. This man is so maybe nearsighted or politically blinded that he believes that You can take the funds from fines and costs that are going to be levied against homeless people to then utilize those funds for the services that he's talking about. Please, they can't afford it. That's the whole point. So a lot of them are going to get arrested because they can't afford the fines.
Also hope that people could voluntarily give donations for emergency relief. There's also precedent for public-private partnerships here. Greenville, South Carolina's homeless shelters joined with their city in 2019, right during COVID, to place placards around key areas of their downtown, asking people not to panhandle or not to give the panhandlers, but instead to contribute to a QR code which would fund an emergency homelessness service for all the folks on the streets in Greensville. And I spoke with the folks there this morning, and it's working. So as we develop our downtown, our riverfront, we can pursue the same philosophies, and this might be a way to achieve that holy grail that we talk about, which is a funded stream, revenue stream, to get people into permanent supportive housing in our city. So in the meantime, really, there's no need to wait. I've heard a lot of people who challenge this bill saying, I can't give money now at the street corner if this passes. Well, you can always give money. You can go to sulzbacherjacks.org and you can give, I think their website says, just $2.89 provides a meal and care. And as we know, the Urban Restaurant now has a mobile service. So we have real opportunities to help folks and get the unsheltered sheltered. This gives us an opportunity to start doing that. Thank you.
The problem with what he's talking about is more of the same. Yeah, we have urban rest stop now. We have shelters right now. But what happened when COVID hit and they had restrictions on the numbers of beds and the numbers of occupants they could accept? Even without COVID, there are not enough beds in Jacksonville to house homeless people. And here's the other problem that he's missing. Shelters are for temporary housing to transition people or get them ready to be moved into permanent housing. What Pastor Barlow is trying to do and Attorney Barlow is trying to do is provide permanent supportive housing for these people, and it's going to take a lot of money to do it. Okay, the city can afford it. They just agreed to give the University of Florida $50 million. The first installment is $20 million. Listen, for 3 fiscal years, the most amount of money that they could calculate that they had towards homeless people was $14 million over 3 years. So the money is there. We need permanent support. What he's talking about means absolutely nothing. He's trying to increase shelters. Shelters is, there are too many people staying in shelters right now. I know people who've been in a shelter for 2 years. No, a shelter should be a very, very short period of time for people to transition into permanent supportive housing.
All right, thank you so much. I have 3 in the queue. I believe all for a second time it's going to be Priestley, Diamond, and Pittman. Ms. Pittman, have you spoken for the first time yet on this? Okay, Ms. Pittman, you're recognized. Mr. Carlucci, you fell off. Are you okay?
To my colleagues, I will tell you, a lot of my clients who come to the Clara White Mission have been hurt, standing on the sideline. It's almost like they have, it's a job for them. You know, they want to take the first shift and somebody take the second shift. But if you come down off of 95 to Kings Road, a lot of the homeless that live either in the encampment area or along the fence, there's an intersection. Those are intersections that they hang out in. And if you come down 95 on 8th Street, you will also see them as well, or Jefferson Street and Beaver Street. My concern, the reason why I can support this is because I am concerned about the safety. And with all of the development that we have coming in La Villa, downtown, I think we need to have a safety program or legislation in place. Now, I don't believe in arresting people. I think, I supported this because it addressed a lot of the safety issues. But I would tell you, my folks don't have $100. To get out. So I'm really depending on, public safety to kind of help get the word out. We got to do a really good job at marketing, especially in those areas that we know that the homeless be. And I want to say this one thing. When we had Tent City and we were able to put the homeless in sort of warehousing. We can't warehouse people, but we were able to transition them off the streets, provide essential services to those individuals, and get them housing and or hotels. I think we just gotta, this is a hard population. It's not something that you could do overnight. Mental health is a big issue among the homeless. Today, I'm really looking forward to the Salzbacher Center utilizing their new bus to not only go downtown, but there are other areas that are on 95 or the intersections that you will see several families and or individuals. So I am supporting this because of the safety issue and because of the issues that I've had at Clara White Mission with some of the homeless being hurt at the intersection.
I want to see that. I want to see those stats. Homeless people being hurt at intersections. I'm right down there on the next block. I don't see that. Okay? And I've been on the next block since 2020. I don't see that. The other thing she just said is this right here. She knows that her people does not have $100, yet she's still supporting this bill. Lady, you know exactly what's going to happen to these people, yet you're still supporting this bill.
Now, I want to say this right here as I come back on and try to close this out. What one councilman said about the mental health, matter of fact, I had a meeting with him today to talk about what I'm getting ready to talk about now. And I told him, I said, listen, I heard what you said last week about, a person won't have to serve 10 days. I said, but for every 12 people that get arrested, maybe 1 or 2 might have a mental issue. The vast majority of these people don't have a mental issue, so they're going to serve time in jail, period, point blank. And he was just shocked when I said that. And for the councilman that just spoke about she's not for putting people in jail, yes, you are. You voted for this. So what gets me is people stand up and make one speech, but they vote a totally different way. And I heard some things that disappointed me from some homeless people today about what's happening. So I'm going to close this out with a few other slides. I'm almost done. But here's what I've been really working on for a long time with the city of Jacksonville. These are forgivable loans that were approved by the city council and the mayor. Forgivable loans. I'm going to say that one more time. Forgivable loans, meaning they do not have to be repaid. Look who's getting them. The rich. The rich. Look when they gave them out. Here are the resolutions. Take screenshots. Look these bills up yourself. Look what they were for. Nothing in here to help homeless people. Look at the sums. 9 million, 3, 10 million, 4 million, 3 million. Total 31,123,561. Multiply 5% of that, you come up with $1,556,561 that could have gone towards permanent supported housing for the homeless. Now, who's going to complain about this? This is free money going to the rich. I have a meeting with a very rich person next month, and they like my idea. They like it. But I told the councilman today that I met with, you guys are so squeamish about it. The business community don't mind because y'all are going to keep giving money to the rich. That's why I want to tie 5% to it. Now, this is really tragic. When you really understand this right here, take your screenshot or two. These are grants. Grants. Not for college. These are grants for businesses. Listen. Here's the date, the funding vehicle, the resolution, the funding type, the sum, the percentage that will go to homeless people. Look at this. This is Goodrich Corporation getting $108,000 for qualified targeted industry grant, a recapture enhancement value grant, REV grant, $1,100,000. Well, I want 5% of that for the homeless. Look at Dun & Bradstreet. This is one of the richest countries. This is one of the richest companies in the world. Right here, Housing Jacksonville. They got $6 million in one grant, $12 million in another one. Relocation grant. Headquarters retention, they're not going anywhere. I was talking to the councilman last week. Well, we give this money because we want to maintain these companies. These companies not going anywhere. Jacksonville, they love Jacksonville. Jacksonville gives them everything they want. These companies aren't going anywhere. Here's one, Johnson & Johnson, getting $7 million. I want 5% of it for the home. Here's Iguana Investments. You know who that is? That's Shad Khan. That's Shad Khan's organization. $50 million. These are recapture, rev grants. That's still a lot of money. Down here, PaySafe Payment Processing. They made $120 billion. While we giving them $3.6 million and $5 million. So when I added all of this up, it came out that between August of 2019 and December 13 of 2022, the city of Jacksonville, this is your my tax money now. This is our tax money, $216,212,816. 5% of that is that right there. I want 5% of all this money to go to the homeless. It's not a tax increase. They're already giving it away. And the people who will get the companies that are getting the money don't even need it anyway, so they won't miss 5% at all. They won't miss it at all. Look at this. Total grant funding for businesses, $216,212,816. Total forgivable loans, $31 million. Total corporate welfare, I call it what it is, $247 million. I mean, 5% of that, $12 million. Now, Changing Homelessness told us in the Critical Quality of Life Issues Committee that to do nothing will cost about $20 million. But if you want to fund permanent supported housing for 192 people who are the most critically homeless and sick and all of that, it would only cost $10 million, $10.8 million. What if the city had done what I wanted them to do? They'd have had $12.3 million and would have had a surplus to do other things with that same amount of money. So that's what I'm really working on. I want to see how many people are going to support this who voted for the panhandling law. But I took the time to do this because I really want the public to be aware. I'll just share this with you. A guy accosted me on Facebook the other day, and he was kind of angry that I want to take some of his tax money and give it to homeless people for permanent supportive housing. So I asked him, I said, let me ask you a question. I said, which would you prefer? Your hard-earned tax money going towards rich people who can get even richer, but you can't get that same amount of money. Would you want your money to go to rich people to get richer? Or if you had a choice, would you want it to go for poor people to have somewhere to stay? You know what his answer was. So I did this because I really want this information to get out in the public square so that people can see that a lot of our elected officials, and don't get me wrong, I respect all of them. I pray for them. I believe in Romans chapter 13, verses 1-7, which says all the powers that be are ordained of God. You cannot be a president. You cannot be a governor. You cannot be a senator, a congressman, a lawyer, a mother, a father, a dog catcher without God authorizing it. And God tells us to pray for those who are in positions of leadership. When you pray for a peace of the city that you live in, you're going to have peace. Only a fool would not pray for their own elected officials, because if they do the wrong thing, you and I are going to suffer. All right, I'm done with this. I don't know who else on here, if you got any press or whatever. If anybody have any questions, I can answer them right now, but I'm done with my presentation. Any questions from anybody before I go? You can unmute. Any questions from anybody? Going once. Good.
I don't have a question, Attorney Barlow.
Okay.
This is Omega Allen. I don't have a question, but I do want to commend you and thank you for sharing this information and bringing a lot of things to light that a lot of people were unaware of in this depth. So my hat's off to you. Thank you, and keep up the good work. You're in my prayers.
Hey, thank you, because I need them. Anybody else before I get off? All right. Thank you all. For share it. Please share this information. Everybody needs to understand what's really going on downtown. I'm telling you, I'm not going to get into some of the things that I know from talking to homeless people, but I know personally, know by name. And I found out a lot of information about things that's going on. I'm going to share one with you because I think it's important. There's a shelter in town, and I've seen this before, so I know it's accurate. I've seen it myself. There's a shelter that people are being abused. Some people won't even stay in this shelter because they've been battered. Women have been raped or attempted rape. And so they would rather sleep outside than this particular shelter. And just today, I heard this, that, you know, some of the shelters will use homeless people to help them. They're volunteers. And what happens a lot of times is they get preference over the food, over the clothing. And so what I hear a lot of times is the homeless people who work with the shelters and the workers at the shelters, they will go through the donations. Now, this is not to stop you from giving donations. Please keep giving them because they need them. But they will go through the donations and take the prime things and give all the trash to the other people. That happens. I've seen it happen before, okay? I remember back when I had a 20th reunion and we had food left over. Just broke my heart. We had food left over and I took the food down that Friday night to one of the missions. And so the next day we had a picnic and I took some more food the next day. And so when I was walking in with the food, a guy said, "Hey man, we're not gonna get that food." I said, "What are you talking about?" He said, "You brought some food here last night, right?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "We didn't get that food." I said, "What are you talking about?" He said, "As soon as you drove off, the people who work here divided that food amongst themselves. They didn't give any of it to us." I cried like a baby. I cried. But I know it happens. I saw it back in 1999. So what I heard today is no different. These things have been happening. They still happen. So I want you to know, like I know, so that you can be fully informed. Amen. You all have a very blessed, peaceful, and prosperous day. I'm going to sign off.
Attorney Ball, can I?
Yes.
I'm sorry. I have one question. I'm Kevin Smith. You may have touched on it briefly, but are there any statistics on people being injured? I want to know what gave rise to this ordinance. Was it because of the theme seems to be safety, but how many people have been injured, killed?
Yeah, I did cover that. I covered that earlier. Okay. I'm gonna go back to the beginning. I covered that earlier. They cite a study. Where is it? They cite a study from DOT. So you can go to DOT and get it. But they cite a study saying that Jacksonville is the 6th most dangerous city in the nation for pedestrian and cyclist accidents. So they do cite some data, but what I was talking about earlier, before you got on probably, was that the city has not said whether any of these people who were hurt or killed were panhandlers. We have a lot of pedestrians get killed all the time who are not panhandlers.
Right.
Not at all.
Right.
Cyclists get killed. I'm a cyclist. I know cyclists who've gotten killed, you know? And so what they haven't said is so many panhandlers have gotten killed. No, they're clumping that, they're just kind of, it's a shotgun blast. So if you want to find out yourself, which is what I'm going to do, go to FDOT, their website, they have studies, and go to the U.S. Department of Transportation. I just haven't had a chance to do it yet. And they have the studies on there. They may break that data down in terms of who, you know, what happened to who. But the city did not differentiate that. They did just kind of shotgun, in a shotgun manner, mention that Jacksonville is a dangerous place. Well, look, most personal injury attorneys have an office in Jacksonville because we have more accidents than anybody else, except Miami.
Right.
Anybody else?
Okay.
Only Miami.
Yes, I just have one comment about something that was made from one of the council people touting the services that the Schultzbacher and other agencies do. And my hat's off to them for what they do, but they are not the panacea. They do not offer long-term or beneficial services to a lot of them. I know of homeless people who will not go in there because they only allow them to bring two bags in, and they have all of their earthly possessions with them. So they opt to live out on the street rather than going inside out of the elements and leave themselves open for predators and the elements. So we've got to do something that's going to bring some sustainable housing for them.
You just mentioned something that reminded me of what they told me. I got a call from a friend of mine on the 15th. That was last Wednesday. Now, the city council adopted this bill on the 14th, Valentine's Day. The next day, the sheriff's office came out here with the city workers, with the ambassadors. They cleaned They made every homeless person leave the lot, and they swept it, and they took all of their items away. That's unconstitutional right there. There's a case down in Fort Lauderdale that Fort Lauderdale lost because of this same thing. So I talked to some lawyers today about that, and if possible, it's going to be some litigation about that on top of the panhandling ordinance. But I want to go back to something you said about the homeless shelters. I've been studying this issue going on 3 years now and working with them and learning as much as I can. And what I've learned is this right here. Jacksonville has done a good job of funding temporary housing for homeless people. They've made the people who run Souls Bark and all these other places pretty well off, but not the people who they serve. And so, again, a shelter is for temporary housing, but that's not how Jacksonville uses shelters. Jacksonville uses shelters as permanent housing for people so that the shelters benefit more than the people that they serve. I'm not against any shelter, but I'm just calling a spade a spade. The shelters, if the shelters didn't get so much money, it will force other avenues to happen. And so the shelters do a pretty good job, but like you said, they're not a panacea. And I told everybody when I first started this, I don't want to hear from too many shelter people because you've been doing this a long time. We need out of the box thinking. We need something totally different to ameliorate this problem so that we can get these people permanent supportive housing, not just housing, but supportive housing, drug counseling if they need it, alcohol counseling if they need it, Christian counseling, financial assistance, and things like that.
I agree.
All right. Anything else before we close out? Anybody else? Please, ma'am and sir, share this information with your friends. Everybody needs to know this information. Y'all have a very blessed, peaceful, and prosperous day. I'm going to sign off.